Why did no one ever notice her? She sat at the far end of the briefing tent, boots dusty, uniform creased from another sleepless night. Staff Sergeant Rosa, ambulance driver, the one who arrived first to every drill, stayed late after every mission, yet somehow she never quite existed to them. Maybe she didn't mind. Maybe invisibility was safer. But that morning, as soldiers laughed, swapped war stories, and pretended danger was something far away, she felt something she couldn't shake, a quiet tremor in her chest, a pulse of instinct, a warning. She had felt it before in deserts and alleyways and ruined cities she no longer let herself think about. She forced a breath, subtle and controlled. She was here now, just a driver, a transport soldier, nobody special. Nobody dangerous. Dean, a voice snapped. Staff Sergeant Webb smirked as he walked past, gear slung over his shoulder. You taking notes on how real soldiers operate today? Laughter followed him, young faces, eager, untested in ways that mattered. Rosa didn't flinch. She simply nodded, expression flat, voice calm. I take notes on everything. They thought she meant it literally, because she always had a pen tucked behind her ear and a notebook folded inside her sleeve. They didn't realize she meant everything. Angles, patterns, exits, the way a man rested his hand on a weapon, the cadence of footsteps approaching behind her. But if anyone noticed the controlled steadiness in her breathing, the way her eyes scanned corners before sitting, the reflexive awareness baked into every movement, they didn't say it. Probably because they weren't looking. Probably because they never had. The convoy rolled out just before dawn, desert wind hissing across armored steel. 3 Humvees, 1 ambulance. Rosa sat at the wheel, hands loose and ready, eyes calm and calculating. They drove in silence except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of radio chatter. It was routine, supposed to be at least. And yet unease clung to her ribs, not loud, not obvious, just a whisper buried deep like a memory calling from another life. Ahead of her, the lead vehicle kicked up sand, swirling it into a shimmering haze. Beyond it, the horizon glowed faintly red with sunrise, a beauty that always made her chest tighten, because she had seen sunrises in places where beauty was always followed by violence. Hey, ambulance girl, the gunner in the 3rd truck radioed playfully. Try not to hit any bumps, yeah. I like my spine where it is. Copy, Rosa replied simply. She didn't argue. No need. Arguments wasted oxygen better spent surviving. She watched the ground like it mattered because it did. For improvised wires, unnatural shapes, disturbed soil. But this road was clean. Too clean. The kind of staged clean that could fool someone not looking closely. But she was always looking. Still nothing happened. They returned to base. Routine, safe, the kind of morning no one would remember. Except her. She always remembered the quiet before storms most. Back in the motor pool, Webb's voice rang out again, too loud, too confident. Dean, try not to scratch my ride next time. That ambulance is softer than your skill set. She didn't look at him, didn't break rhythm in her post-trip inspection. Dirt cleared from vents, hoses checked, tire pressure perfect. I'll do my job, she said softly. Yeah, he snorted. Point A to B, the rest of us will handle the real fight. He walked away laughing. His team followed. Except Martinez, the youngest, eyes troubled, unsure, like maybe he wasn't convinced of the joke. But he didn't speak. People rarely do when silence is safer. That night, under fluorescent lights and quiet hums of distant generators, Rosa reorganized her medical kit. She moved gauze rolls by touch, fingers sure and efficient. Tourniquets positioned so they could be applied blind. Trauma shears placed in a spot that suggested reflex rather than regulation. This wasn't the setup of a normal ambulance driver. And someone finally noticed. You expecting trouble? Chief Warrant Officer Reeves stood in the doorway, arms folded, expression curious rather than accusing. He had watched her for weeks, quietly, carefully, the kind of watching done by someone who knew what to look for. Rosa didn't pause, just kept working, voice steady. Preparation prevents panic. True, Reeves walked closer, eyes sliding over the layout. But most people don't prepare like that unless they've been somewhere that punished hesitation. Rosa's hand slowed, barely. Old habits, she murmured. Reeves studied her a second longer, as though waiting for a crack in the armor, the kind of crack trauma left behind. Her posture never faltered. Her breath never hitched. She simply tightened the Velcro strap on a tourniquet and closed the drawer. "We all carry ghosts," Reeves said eventually. Rosa lifted her eyes, calm, steady, unreadable. "Yes, Chief, some just walk quieter than others." 2 days later, the threat assessment came through. Enemy coordination, increased radio chatter, missing informants, but the base brief dismissed it politely, like danger was a rumor rather than a possibility. Rosa listened from the back, silent, still, and she felt it again, that pressure in her chest. Something was coming. She didn't know when or from where or how, but the air tasted wrong. When she left the briefing room, her steps were measured. She checked escape routes, ammo, fuel, bandages. She walked the motor pool perimeter without explanation, as though routine maintenance masked the truth. She was preparing for a battlefield no one else believed was coming. Fear didn't drive her. Fear, she had learned long ago, was not an enemy, it was information. It was awareness sharpening into instinct. As she scanned the horizon, wind tugging at her sleeves, one question lodged deep behind her ribs. How many times could she pretend she was just a driver before someone found out who she used to be? Or worse, before the battlefield dragged her back into who she really was? The attack didn't come that day. It came in the dead silence of night, when human bodies are weakest and hope sleeps deepest. The world exploded at 02:37. A shockwave ripped through the base, glass shattering, alarms screaming, earth trembling beneath boots. Rosa woke before her brain fully caught up, instincts older than fear taking over. She reached for her weapon first, boots next, heartbeat already calm and controlled. Outside, fire lit the sky orange. Smoke swallowed stars. Screams and orders tangled over radios. A second blast hit, then a third. Precision strikes, pre-planned, coordinated. Not chaos, strategy. Rosa didn't freeze, didn't panic. She moved fast, quiet, efficient, because muscle memory never lies even if a file does. While others shouted questions, she already knew the answer. This wasn't harassment fire. This wasn't random. This was a siege. And she was done pretending. She sprinted to her ambulance, body low, breath controlled. Mortars rained down, shrapnel slicing air. Soldiers scrambled in confusion. Webb's voice cut through the chaos. "Dean, aid station, move." He still thought she was only a driver, still thought orders defined ability. Maybe that protected him. Maybe that saved him. She didn't argue. She started the engine, hands steady as bullets sparked against armor. This was where she belonged. Not hidden, not small. Driving into fire because someone needed to. Because lives hung in seconds. Because ordinary was a luxury she had only borrowed. And as she hit the accelerator, tires chewing gravel, sirens swallowed by gunfire, she whispered to herself, not as prayer but as reminder. Strength doesn't roar. Sometimes it drives an ambulance into hell because no one else will. And tonight, invisibility was over. Tonight, the quiet soldier would let war remember her name. Rosa Dean. Just a driver, they thought. Just a driver. Until the moment the world needed a warrior. What kind of person runs toward gunfire instead of away from it? The question struck her as she slid the ambulance beside the burning aid station. rounds pinging off steel and concrete. Medics shouted orders through adrenaline-shredded voices. Blood slicked the ground. A young soldier screamed into the night, clutching the stump of his arm, his cries jagged and raw like humanity being torn open. Rosa's boots hit the dirt, her breath steady, too steady. Calm in chaos wasn't confidence. It wasn't bravery. It was muscle memory carved by a life she no longer claimed. "Driver, we need 3 moved now. They won't make it if we wait." Staff Sergeant Carter's voice cracked like he was holding the whole world together with words. Rosa nodded once. No wasted motion, no fear, just work. She knelt beside the first wounded private, pale, shaking, breath thin like a candle in wind. "Stay with me," she murmured, not a promise, a command. "Am I?" His voice trembled, eyes unfocused. "Tell my mom." "You're going to tell her yourself." She strapped him into the stretcher like she had done 100 times in training, and 100 times in real life long before that. A needle of pain pricked behind her ribs as she lifted him. Faces blurred in memory, too many missions, too many ghosts. She shoved them away and got to work. Carter grabbed her arm once the doors slammed shut. "Dean, you sure?" he whispered, voice cracking under fear and hope and disbelief. No hesitation. "Yes." She floored the engine. Bullets streaked through smoke-lit darkness, sparks carving brief stars across her windshield. The ambulance bucked over debris, rattling, groaning, screaming metal protest against the violence outside. Inside she was silent. Quiet focus, controlled breath. When death came this close, the world didn't rush, it slowed, turned sharp, efficient. Every second stretched into eternity waiting to snap shut. Skid left, avoid open ground, watch muzzle flashes, count gun bursts, move between volleys. She didn't think, she moved. Fear existed, but not as panic. Fear sharpened her. Fear told her what mattered. Alive, keep them alive. A rocket streaked overhead, close enough for her skin to feel the heat. She gritted her teeth. Not yet. Not here. These soldiers weren't going to die in the back of her ambulance because the world decided they were done. They reached the hardened surgical bunker. The door opened. Hands grabbed stretchers. Blood, screams, orders. Then she was revering before her brain whispered she should breathe. 4 runs, 5. By the 6th, her arms shook from adrenaline and exhaustion. Not fear, fatigue. The kind earned honestly. A bullet shattered the passenger window, glass sprinkling into her lap like ice. She didn't flinch. A rookie medic watching through the bunker doorway froze, eyes wide. Rosa met his gaze briefly. He looked at her like she wasn't human, like she was made of something metal and ancient. She wasn't. She was tired, human, afraid. And she kept moving anyway. Because someone had to. Then the machine gun nest appeared. Deep, elevated, cold-blooded precision, cutting the aid station apart inch by inch. If she pulled out again, they'd shred her truck, her patients, her, everything they were fighting to save. Carter shouted through chaos. "We're pinned, no evac, no one gets out." Someone cursed, someone prayed, someone sobbed quietly. Time stretched. People stared at Rosa, maybe expecting orders, maybe expecting miracles. She wasn't a leader here. She wasn't a hero. She was a driver. But responsibility didn't care what someone's job title said. She saw the path, the culvert, the math of risk and survival. Her heart didn't spike. Her pulse didn't race. It simply settled, as if her body recognized a room it once lived in. She grabbed her rifle. "Dean, what are you doing?" She didn't answer at first, didn't look at Carter or the wounded or Webb's stunned expression. She only checked her weapon, sling, chamber, sight, mental checklist faster than words. "I'm clearing the gun," she finally said. "You'll have evac in 8 minutes." Carter stared, disbelief bending his voice. "You're a driver." Rosa's jaw tightened across old scars, not the visible kind. "For now." She moved before they could argue. Low, silent, swift. A shadow slipping toward violence not because she wanted it, but because no one else could reach it in time. The culvert swallowed her. Cool concrete, damp air, breathing slowed to match the rhythm of death above. Muffled shots echoed like distant thunder. She crawled, weapon angled forward, body tight as coiled steel. Halfway through, she heard footsteps overhead, enemy voices, calm, confident. They thought they owned the battlefield. She finally understood what she felt at dawn, not dread. Recognition. War had always known where to find her. When she reached the exit, she didn't move right away. She counted the bursts, studied angles, watched shadows, be patient, wait, think. A finger on safety, a breath, a heartbeat. Then she emerged, silent as apology, cold as justice. The first target fell before fear could form on his face. 2 shots, controlled. The second turned, slow, predictable, training on his rifle sloppy under surprise. She gave him mercy and speed. The third saw her, shock flashing like lightning, before 3 rounds ended his confusion. 8 seconds. Silence. Stillness. Breath. She held position, checked the bodies, secured the weapon. Then she turned the captured gun toward the perimeter and opened fire, not rage, not fury, simply duty made mechanical. Later, people would say she looked terrifying up there, silhouette framed in flame and tracer light. But inside, she felt none of it. She only felt tired. Hours passed in minutes, minutes passed in hours. When helicopters finally roared overhead, she sagged slightly, not from weakness but from release. Relief. The kind she rarely allowed herself. She stayed until the last wounded cleared, until the perimeter held, until she could breathe again without tasting blood and smoke. When she returned, Webb stared like he didn't recognize her, like she was something impossible wearing a simple uniform. You took out a fortified gun alone." She shrugged, wiping grime from her cheek. It was a good angle. Carter shook his head, awe softening his exhaustion. "You saved the station, Dean. You saved all of them." Rosa looked past him at soldiers being loaded into helicopters, at medics whose hands still shook, at a base that still burned. "I did my job." Simple truth. No glory in it, no pride, just necessity followed by silence. A Humvee stopped, doors opened. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell stepped out. A civilian followed, posture military, presence sharp. DIA, not here for wounded. Here for her. The moment Rosa's eyes met his, she knew. The past she had locked behind quiet routines and small smiles had followed her. He nodded, not greeting, confirmation. "Staff Sergeant Dean," Mitchell said carefully, "there's someone who needs a word." Her jaw tightened barely enough to notice. Understood. A choice waited, but not yet. First came explanation, exposure, truth. And truth always weighed more than bullets. Inside the command tent, the world narrowed to voices and consequences. Her file opened. Her secrets surfaced, spoken in clean military language like they weren't made from blood and loss. 187 missions. Naval Special Warfare Support. Black Program. Embedded with SEAL teams. Reeves exhaled sharply, Webb's world tilted, and Rosa just sat still, silent, tired. She didn't defend herself, didn't argue, just listened as they dissected the life she had tried to bury. Mitchell finally spoke, voice softer than surprise should allow. "You could go back. Intelligence, special operations, whatever door they open for you." A pause. "Or you stay here." The room waited. Rosa closed her eyes. In darkness, she saw desert dawns, wounded hands gripping hers, soldiers who laughed at her because they believed the world was safe enough to underestimate someone. She opened them again. "I'll finish my deployment." "Driving ambulances?" Harrison asked, eyebrows raised, half challenged, half respectful. Saving lives, teaching when needed. She breathed, felt the weight shift from her chest, being useful without disappearing into shadows again. Mitchell nodded slowly, respect replacing shock. You earned that choice. No one in the room questioned it. She was more soldier in that silence than in any firefight. Later, back in the cooling night air, Webb approached, not with swagger, with humility rare and real. Dean, he swallowed hard, I was wrong about you. Rosa didn't soften, didn't smile, she simply met his eyes. Then don't be wrong about the next person. His throat worked, he nodded. Lesson learned not by humiliation but by revelation. He didn't see a hero. He saw someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Someone who did the work quietly, even when the world never clapped. Someone dangerous not because she killed, but because she saved without hesitation. Someone strong in the way real strength lives. Quiet, steady, unadvertised. War turned ordinary people into legends or ghosts. Rosa chose neither. She chose to stay human. She walked back to her ambulance alone, heat of smoking metal still rising around her. Sirens faded. Helicopters thumped toward horizon. A soldier nearby muttered, voice trembling with disbelief. That wasn't an ambulance driver tonight. Rosa paused, only for a breath before answering quietly. I was. Because sometimes the most powerful warriors aren't the ones who chase war. They're the ones who try to outrun it, and still turn back when others need them more. And somewhere deep inside, she felt an old truth settle, not as burden but as clarity. Strength isn't the absence of fear. Strength is the calm step forward, when no one else can take it. When morning finally crawled into the sky, it didn't feel like dawn. It felt like aftermath. Smoke still rose in lazy columns across the base, drifting upward like tired ghosts. Fire crews worked half-heartedly, medics moved with heavy feet, and the smell, burned metal, scorched earth, and blood clung to the air like memory trying to stick. Rosa stood alone by her ambulance, sleeves rolled up, arms dusted with dried sweat and ash. Engines hummed weakly around her, but the loudest sound was silence, the fragile, brittle kind after violence finally pauses. Some soldiers laughed too loud, voices cracking with brittle relief. Others sat on crates staring into nothing, helmets still on, hands trembling, their minds replaying flashes they couldn't swallow. Every face held something raw. And still life continued. That was war's strangest truth. Even after chaos, someone always had to sweep floors, refill water jugs, clear spent casings, stitch wounds, report names. The world didn't stop just because souls shattered. Rosa leaned against the open back door of the ambulance, organizing supplies again, not because they needed organizing, but because her mind needed shape, structure, something real to hold while her thoughts drifted too close to places she didn't want to revisit. Dean, a voice murmured. She turned to find Private Martinez standing there, helmet tucked under his arm. His eyes held none of the mockery from days before, just humility, maybe guilt. Specialist Davis wants to thank you, he said. He thought he was bleeding out last night. You got him here, he wouldn't be. Rosa lifted a hand gently, cutting him off without sharpness. You don't owe me anything. Martinez shook his head. That's just it, we do. His voice trembled just slightly, not weakness, humanity. Rosa didn't answer. She returned her gaze to the supplies, bandages, antiseptic, tourniquets, familiar things, predictable. She could trust these tools more than faces or praise or promises. Martinez hesitated, then cleared his throat. Can I ask you something? She didn't look up. You can ask. Why'd you hide who you were? The question hung there, gentle but heavy. Rosa's hands paused over a row of IV kits. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to stop being who you were. He waited. She didn't continue. Some truths were too private for casual daylight. Martinez opened his mouth to say something, maybe apology, maybe thanks, but before sound came, a shout echoed from across the motor pool. "Dean! Webb!" Rosa closed the kit, turned, stood ready, neutral. Webb approached briskly, helmet off, face pale and serious in a way she'd never seen. He stopped a few feet away, breathing like the air hurt him. "Colonel wants to see you." Rosa blinked once, unbothered. "Now?" "Yeah, and Webb scratched at his jaw. "Hey, Dean." She waited. "You really didn't have to save us." She studied him, weary but steady. "Yes," she said quietly, "I did. Not duty, humanity." Then she walked. Webb exhaled in confusion as though he expected something triumphant, a speech, a proud stance, a hero's smile. But Rosa had never chased glory. She had chased meaning, and those two things rarely lived in the same room. Colonel Mitchell's office smelled like burnt coffee and stress. Papers cluttered the desk, maps layered with red ink circles marking breaches, trajectories, impact zones. This place had turned into a war room overnight. Mitchell looked up when Rosa entered. Her expression wasn't military hardness. It was fatigue wearing command like armor. "Sit," she said. Rosa did. For a long moment, neither spoke. There was no need. Silence carried more truth than questions ever could. Finally, Mitchell folded her hands. "You slept at all?" "No, ma'am." "Didn't think so." Mitchell rubbed her temples. "After-action interviews with almost every squad leader mention you." Rosa didn't flinch. The intelligence rep filed a reference. Reeves filed a commendation request. Carter hasn't stopped telling everyone in medical they owe you their careers. Mitchell sighed. "And Webb?" A faint smile tugged at her mouth. "Apparently, he's decided you're the scariest person he's ever met." Rosa offered no reaction. Praise felt hollow, not undeserved, just irrelevant. People celebrated heroism before they buried trauma. Mitchell studied her quietly. "You don't like the attention, do you?" "No, ma'am." "Why?" Rosa hesitated, a rare crack, thin as paper but real. "I didn't come here to be seen." Mitchell leaned forward, elbows on desk, gaze softening. "But now you are." Rosa forced her breath steady. Visibility complicates things. "For who?" "For everyone." Mitchell nodded slowly, understanding shaping her expression. "You're not running," she said, "not asking statting." "No." "Good, because whether you like it or not, they look to you now." Rosa stiffened, not from ego, from reluctance. Leadership was not a gift. It was burden disguised as respect. "I don't want that." Mitchell gave a humorless laugh. "Real leaders never do." They sat in quiet. Then the colonel leaned back, voice gentler. "You scared them last night and impressed them and saved them. That combination changes people." Rosa stared at her own hands, steady, unshaking, calloused from 10,000 drills and 1,000 realities no one here had names for. "I don't want to be a reminder of what war takes." Mitchell's voice softened further. "Sometimes the reminder is the only thing that keeps the rest alive." A heavy truth, a painful one. War didn't end men, it carved them. Women too, not by bullets, by purpose, by loss, by expectation. Mitchell stood. "I'm putting you on special assignment until further notice. Teach them, train them, prepare them. I think that's why you're here." Rosa looked up, "And when it's over?" Mitchell's eyes warmed, unexpectedly human. "When it's over, you get to decide again who you want to be." That landed deep, too deep. Rosa rose, saluted quietly, and left. Outside, sunlight glared against metal and dust, too bright for the weight she carried. She didn't go back to the barracks, didn't go to the med bay. Instead, her feet carried her somewhere else, somewhere instinct led. The perimeter wall. Burn marks scarred concrete, Shell fragments littered the dirt. A helmet lay abandoned, cracked from impact. The wind nudged it gently like trying to wake a sleeping soldier. Rosa crouched, fingertips brushing the helmet. She didn't know who wore it, didn't know if they survived. The not knowing bothered her more than certainty. Death was final, cruel but clear. Silence was crueler. Behind her, footsteps approached softly. "You okay?" "Reeves?" She didn't answer. He crouched beside her, letting the moment breathe. "Some people avoid battlefields after the fight," he murmured. "Others seek them." "Reflection," Rosa whispered, "not seeking." "Same thing sometimes." They sat in quiet. Wind, dust, grief, not spoken but present. Reeves broke it gently. "You knew exactly what to do last night. That wasn't instinct. That was training." Rosa closed her eyes briefly. "Training isn't what saves you," she exhaled slowly. "It's remembering what matters." "And what matters to you?" She didn't answer. He didn't push. After a minute, he spoke again. "There is a rumor going around." Rosa raised an eyebrow. "They say you're some kind of ghost soldier. Someone who fights like she's already survived death too many times to fear it anymore." Her jaw tightened, not from pride, from memory. "I don't like myths," she murmured. Reeves nodded. "Then show them truth." Truth, heavy, sharp, honest. She stood slowly. Reeves did too. "You know," he continued quietly, "when Webb talks about you now, he sounds afraid." "Of me?" "No," he said, "of how wrong he was." Rosa looked away. "I don't want them afraid." "Then teach them," his voice softened, "not to worship you, to stand beside you." Rosa inhaled a slow, steady breath, the kind she took before stepping off boats into hostile surf, before breaching doors, before choosing duty over self. "I'll try." Reeves smiled faintly. "Trying isn't your problem. Letting them see you is." Her breath hitched, slight, involuntary, human. He walked away. She watched dust rise behind his boots, and a thought surfaced uninvited. What happens to wolves when they try to become caretakers? Do they protect the flock or remember hunger? She didn't know. She hoped she would never need to. As she walked back toward camp, soldiers glanced up, nods, gratitude, disbelief. A medic saluted awkwardly. A mechanic placed a hand over his heart shyly. Someone whispered, thinking she couldn't hear. "That's her, the one who stopped the Ridge gun alone." Rosa kept walking. Not proud, not embarrassed, just existing in a body caught between two worlds, anonymity and legend, peace and violence, who she pretended to be and who she had been trained to become. Inside the ambulance bay, she paused, one hand on the door, breath held between past and future. Last night she chose to reveal herself. This morning she had to live with it. She whispered, voice barely sound at all. "Please let this matter." Because strength wasn't just surviving the fight. Strength was waking up after it, still willing to care. And caring hurt far more than bullets ever could. How do you step back into ordinary routines after crossing a line you never meant to cross again? By pretending the world didn't watch you change. Rosa moved through the base that afternoon like a ghost wearing skin. Clean uniform, boots polished, ambulance checked. She trained her face into neutrality, not cold, not distant, just present enough. Some soldiers stared openly now. Others avoided her eyes, as if afraid she could see fear hiding behind them. Voices lowered when she passed, conversations shifting like a stream parting around a stone. Respect was heavy, so was revelation. She didn't want either. At the medical tent, she found Carter checking supplies, sleeves rolled up, exhaustion aging him 10 years in a night. He looked up, relief softening his shoulders. "You showed up," he exhaled. "Was I expected not to?" He smiled tiredly. "Would have forgiven you if you didn't." Rosa shook her head. I wasn't trained to disappear when people bleed. Carter paused, studying her. Funny, most people weren't trained to run toward bullets either. She didn't answer, no point arguing truth. He cleared his throat. We're reorganizing medical caches today. Could use your judgment. She nodded, not as officer, not as legend, just as someone who knew how to build order in chaos. They worked in silence, hands moving through bags, checking expiration dates, reorganizing trauma kits. Carter coughed now and then, a sound of a man trying to swallow deeper feelings. You ever lose someone you couldn't save? He asked suddenly, voice low like admitting fear to the dark. Rosa paused in her sorting barely, but enough. Yes. He nodded, relief and sorrow mixing. How do you carry that? She tied a bandage roll, fingers steady, carefully. Carefully. Like broken glass. If you hold it too tight, it cuts. Too loose, you drop it and step on pieces later. Carter stared at her, a quiet respect in his eyes, the kind born from understanding pain rather than witnessing strength. Before he could respond, the tent flap rustled and a young private stuck his head in. Staff Sergeant Dean, Colonel wants you at briefing tent. Another one. Rosa exhaled softly, setting the bag aside. I'll finish this later. Carter touched her sleeve gently, not stopping her, grounding her. Hey. She looked at him. You don't have to prove anything anymore. We saw. Rosa blinked once, a pause, a thank you without speaking. Then she walked toward the briefing tent, steps slow, shoulders held just right, ready but tired. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed. Soldiers stood in uneven lines, maps pinned to boards, coffee cups shaking in hands not ready for another fight. Webb stood near the front, jaw tight, expression complicated, pride warred with humility, and something almost like guilt. When Rosa entered, the noise dipped. Mitchell stood at the head of the room, eyes on her, calm, calculated. Dean, she gestured, up front. Rosa stepped forward, unsure what waited for her. Mitchell addressed the room. Last night, our base faced a coordinated attack designed to cripple our defenses. We would be digging bodies out of rubble right now if not for every soldier here. But there was one intervention that prevented complete medical collapse and allowed QRF to regroup. She turned her head to Rosa. Staff Sergeant Dean. The room shifted, boots scraped. Someone swallowed loudly, Rosa's skin prickled. I commend your actions, Mitchell continued, but we don't celebrate war here, we learn from it. Rosa appreciated that, quiet humility instead of applause, the right tone. Mitchell looked at her firmly. You're authorized to assist with defensive readiness, tactical, medical mobility, voluntary instruction for those who want it. Webb cleared his throat. We all want it, ma'am. A few murmurs, a few nods, some eyes still wide with disbelief, others curious, eager. Rosa didn't speak yet, not sure what to say to a room that suddenly expected guidance instead of silence. Mitchell dismissed the group, then approached Rosa slower, voice lower. You okay? Rosa studied her face, not command now but human concern. I'm managing. Managing isn't peace. Peace, such a soft word for something most soldiers never truly reached. I'm trying, Rosa whispered. Mitchell's gaze softened. Trying is sometimes enough. Rosa wasn't sure she believed that. As she turned to leave, Webb stepped into her path. He didn't posture this time. No smirk, no swagger, just raw honesty carved by hard learning. You know, he began awkwardly, I spent 2 deployments thinking I had this figured out, how to read a soldier, how to spot the ones who'd break, who'd stand, who'd carry weight. Rosa waited. He swallowed. Turns out I didn't know a damn thing. You knew enough to stand last night, she said gently. He shook his head. No, I stood because people like you existed. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, honest. You'll teach us, he asked finally. If you really want to learn. He almost laughed. After last night, everyone wants to learn from you. Rosa paused, then looked him in the eye, tone steady and low. Then the first lesson is this: never assume someone's value by what you see. He blinked, hit by truth sharper than bullets. Fair. Rosa walked past him. Outside, sunlight glared again, like the world insisted on brightness even when hearts still carried night. Later, after setting training schedules and approving supply lists, Rosa found herself standing outside the barracks, unsure where to go. Her duties were both clearer and heavier. Purpose wasn't always freedom. Dean. Reeves again, always appearing when her thoughts drifted too close to places she didn't want them. You look like someone who hates being thanked. Thank yous remind me of people who didn't get saved. Reeves nodded. That's survivor's logic. It's true. It's weight, he corrected softly. Weight is not truth. Rosa didn't answer. He crossed his arms. Let me guess you're already thinking ahead. Next crisis, next moment, next purpose. Preparation prevents panic. Prepared isn't the same as present. Her eyes flicked away. She didn't like the accuracy. Reeves lowered his voice. When was the last time you let yourself just exist? Exist, without mission, without vigilance, without ghosts lining walls of memory. She didn't respond. He took her silence as answer. Come with me, he said, just a walk. Her instinct resisted motion without requirement felt foreign. But a deeper part, the exhausted part, agreed before she could fight it. They walked the outer path along the wire. No urgency, just boots crunching sand, wind nudging loose strands of her hair, the world quiet in a way that felt almost wrong. For a minute she forgot she was being watched, followed, admired, feared. For a minute she was a soldier walking dirt under open sky, nothing more. Reeves eventually spoke. You weren't just running toward fire last night. You were running away from something too, weren't you? Rosa's footsteps slowed. His voice softened. People like you don't expose themselves unless there's more at stake than lives. She closed her eyes, saw flashes, faces, missions, nights colder than this desert dawn. Doors she kicked, lives she couldn't undo, names she never learned, screams swallowed by radio static and rifle recoil. I wanted quiet, she whispered. And then quiet asked me to choose between pretending and protecting. Reeves exhaled slow. That's the curse. The ones who try to rest are always the ones the world calls again. She didn't deny it. He stopped walking, she did too. You can train them, he said. You can lead them, you can shield them, but you don't have to carry them alone. Rosa met his eyes, steady, unwavering. I don't know how to let others carry weight. He smiled sadly. Then we start with something small. Today you walk, tomorrow you teach, and somewhere along the way you learn how to be just Rosa Dean sometimes, not the shadow, not the secret. Something in her chest tightened, not pain, hope, fragile, unwelcome, real. She turned away slightly. The horizon burned orange against fatting smoke. For a second, she let herself feel something she rarely did. Longing. Not for battle, for normal, for mornings without sirens, for conversations where she didn't measure exits or analyze voices, for a life where skill didn't mean scars. She breathed in, slow, controlled. I don't know who I am without mission. Reeves nodded. Maybe that's why you're here, to find out. A wind swept across the dunes, warm and full of dust, but soft. Rosa let it brush her skin. She didn't speak again, didn't need to. Sometimes healing wasn't about words. Sometimes it was standing still long enough to feel the world touch you without threat. When she finally turned back toward base, her steps were lighter, not free, but less anchored by memory. Reeves followed, hands in pockets, silent companion rather than observer. As they neared the motor pool, A junior soldier jogging past stopped abruptly and snapped to attention, panicked salute nearly smacking his forehead. "Ma'am." Rosa blinked. "I'm enlisted." "Oh, a staff sergeant." "It's okay." She softened her tone. "Carry on." He ran, clumsy, nervous, honest. Reeves smirked. "You know they're already telling stories about you." "I know." "Are they true?" She paused, then answered quietly. "Stories make things cleaner than they are." "And reality?" Her voice lowered. "Reality is just doing what you hope you can live with tomorrow." Reeves considered that. "You did last night." Her gaze drifted to the ambulance bay. "Ask me again in 10 years. He didn't argue. As Rosa walked away, a thought settled deep, not sharp like fear, not heavy like duty, but gentle and dangerous as hope. Maybe redemption wasn't a destination. Maybe it was a choice. Repeated daily, quiet, unseen. Like a soldier who could kill, choosing instead to heal. Like a warrior learning to become human again. And as she reached the ambulance, laid her palm against its side, and exhaled, one simple truth formed in her mind, soft but strong. Sometimes the hardest battle is convincing yourself you deserve peace after surviving war. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is try. Some nights don't end, even when the sun comes up. The base looked alive again, but not whole. Not really. You could sweep rubble and patch walls and stack sandbags, but there were things no engineer could rebuild: trust in safety, belief in normal. The desert didn't care. Wind pushed dust across tire tracks, heat shimmered. The world ignored grief because it always had. Rosa stood at the firing range alone. Dust swirled around her boots. Her rifle rested against her shoulder, barrel pointed at the horizon, not at a paper target. She hadn't fired once. The place was quiet, empty, but she held the weapon like she expected shadows to form in the heat. She wasn't here to shoot. She was here to breathe. To remember her hands didn't exist only to save or kill, that they could simply rest. But rest wasn't coming easily. Waiting for the enemy to announce themselves. Reeves' voice drifted behind her, gentle, not mocking, observant. "Habit," she murmured, lowering the rifle. "Sometimes I forget the world isn't always hostile." "It is," he said softly, "just not always toward you." She glanced at him. "I don't know how to exist without assignment, without threat." Reeves leaned against the barrier, hands in pockets. "Maybe assignment isn't over. Maybe it changed." She didn't answer. He nodded toward the base, toward soldiers moving in small groups, toward medics carrying supply crates, toward a mechanic wiping grease off his hands as he joked with a platoon sergeant. "They look at you differently now." "I didn't ask for that." "No one ever does." She faced him fully now. "I wasn't supposed to be that again." "What? Capable, lethal, necessary." "Exposed," she said quietly. Reeves met her eyes. No pity, no awe, just understanding, the rare kind that comes from someone who knew exactly what it meant to hide in plain sight. "You think anonymity kept you human?" "It did." He shook his head. "No, choices did." His voice softened, almost careful. "You didn't reveal who you were last night. Who you are revealed itself." Her throat tightened. That frightened her more than bullets. Reeves pushed off the barrier. "They're gathering in the motor pool, training briefing, you coming?" Rosa hesitated. The rifle felt heavier suddenly, as if it resisted letting go. "Yeah," she breathed, "I'm coming." A crowd formed, not formal, not ordered, but eager and unsaid. Soldiers in dusty uniforms, medics with stethoscopes hanging loosely around tired necks, mechanics wiping oil from calloused fingers. Webb stood frontright, arms crossed, expression earnest. Martinez beside him, quiet but ready. When Rosa approached, conversation dipped again. Not silence, not fear, but focus. Anticipation, respect, something deeper, something dangerous. She didn't want worship, she wanted work, reality, truth, not myth. She spoke without raising her voice, but every head tilted toward her like sound pulled gravity. There is no special class today, no elite program, no rank requirement. Her tone level, firm, honest. If you want to be here because you want to learn to keep people alive, including yourselves. Webb nodded once, hard. Martinez squared his posture. Even new privates straightened, wanting to stand in a world she'd reminded them could fall apart overnight. Rosa continued. War doesn't always knock. Sometimes it crawls in the dark. Sometimes it walks right through the front gate while you're laughing at breakfast. They listened, breath held, shoulders tense. And when it comes, the question isn't whether you are ready to fight. She looked across the group, young, old, confident, terrified, hopeful. It's whether you can keep your mind steady when fear feels louder than orders. Someone swallowed loudly, another clenched their jaw. You already proved you can stand. You were here last night, you fought, you helped. Even if you felt useless, you showed up. She stepped closer to them, voice softer now. Showing up matters more than skill. Webb's jaw flexed, not in pride this time, but humility. We will train tactics, medical care under fire, movement. But none of that matters if you forget the first truth. A pause, breath held. You are not alone. Silence, heavy but warm, human. Spread out, groups of 4. We start with fundamentals. They moved, hesitant at first, then with purpose. Confidence didn't return overnight, but action was the first step back to agency. Rosa's voice carried across the motor pool, calm, patient, firm. It's not about who shoots fastest, it's who thinks clearest. She demonstrated stance, sight, picture, tunnel vision control. She corrected a grip here, a shoulder position there. No ego, no performance, pure teaching. Martinez, elbow lower. You're exposing too much. Webb, don't choke your weapon. Control isn't force. Carter, breathe out before squeezing. No theatrics, no power trip. Skill translated into simple motion. Sweat mixed with dust. Adrenaline settled into discipline. Laughter surfaced in pockets, small, cautious at first, then freer. Fear didn't disappear, but it began transforming. Fear into capability. Panic into preparedness. Myth into mentorship. Reeves watched from the edge, arms folded, pride quiet under his expression. Not the pride of knowing he discovered her, the pride of watching someone step into who they needed to be. Hours passed. When training finished, the sky had smeared gold across the dunes. Soldiers lingered, hesitant to leave, like stepping away might break whatever thread of strength they'd started weaving together. Webb approached, helmet under his arm. His face was different now, still sharp, still stubborn, but anchored by humility. You know, he said, voice low, I always thought courage was charging forward when everyone else held back. What do you think now? That courage is doing the right thing before anyone knows they need it. Rosa nodded once. That's closer to truth. Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, Staff Sergeant, can I ask something? She braced slightly, softening her posture so the question could land safely. Go on. How did you stop shaking? After, last night, my hands I could. His voice faltered. Webb looked at him, not irritated, supportive. Rosa took a breath. You don't stop shaking, you manage it, you breathe through it. You let yourself feel fear, not drown in it. Martinez looked down. I felt weak. You felt human, she corrected gently. Weakness isn't fear. Weakness is letting fear stop you. He nodded slowly, absorbing more than her words. And you didn't, she added. You're here. The young soldier's shoulders eased like she had loosened a weight on his spine. He wasn't the only one. A murmur of gratitude moved through the group, quiet, real. They didn't salute, they didn't clap, they didn't worship. They respected, not the legend, the person. Rosa swallowed a strange feeling, uncomfortable, unfamiliar, unsettling. Pride, not ego. Pride that she helped someone breathe again after drowning in fear. When the crowd finally dispersed, Reeves approached, amusement flickering in his eyes. You know, for someone who didn't want attention, you just built a loyal platoon. I built confidence, she said softly. There's a difference. And what about yours? She didn't answer. He studied her. What scares you most right now? Her breath steadied before answering, a reflex she didn't need anymore, yet couldn't stop. That I am good at war, she murmured, voice fragile like glass. And I don't know if I can ever be good at peace. Reeves' face shifted, sympathy, clarity, sadness all tangled together. You already are. How do you know? He nodded toward the motor pool, where a soldier practiced clearing a rifle with newly steady hands, where medics checked gear more deliberately, where Webb corrected a private gently instead of barking orders, where fear had begun to turn into preparedness. Because peace isn't quiet, Reeves said. Peace is teaching others to survive. The wind pulled at her sleeve, soft but insistent. You gave them strength, he added. That's peace work too. Rosa didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because she didn't trust her voice not to break under the weight of relief and guilt blended inside her chest. Reeves stepped closer. You can stop fighting who you are, Rosa. You don't have to choose between the warrior and the healer. She looked at him tired, hopeful, afraid, determined. Maybe I don't know how to be both. Learn, he whispered. Same way you learned everything, slowly, painfully, and with grit. Silence settled, warm, real, a beginning disguised as exhaustion. Rosa exhaled, letting breath carry tension out with it. I'll try. Reeves smiled. Trying is how peace begins. As the last soldier left the motor pool, Rosa glanced at her hands. Calloused, steady, scarred, capable of violence, capable of saving, capable of teaching. Hands that had taken life. Hands that had protected it. Hands that now carried both truths without breaking. She whispered not prayer, not confession, just truth finally spoken without fear. I don't want to be invisible again. Sand whispered across concrete. The world didn't judge her, it simply heard her. And for the first time in years, Rosa Dean allowed herself to want something life had rarely offered. To be seen, without being feared. Not because she fought, but because she stayed. Because she cared. Because she taught others how to stand when the world tried to collapse around them. And sometimes, that was stronger than any battlefield victory. Peace had edges. Not soft ones, sharp, thin, invisible until you brushed too close and felt the sting. Rosa woke before sunrise again, not because an alarm demanded it, but because her body still believed the world could collapse in the dark. Some habits didn't vanish with safety. Some scars breathed under skin. She sat in the dim barracks, boots unlaced, hands resting loosely on her knees. Outside, a generator hummed. Someone coughed. Distant metal clanged against concrete. Life on base didn't sleep, it paused between breaths. She rubbed at her thumbs absently. When the mind wandered, it always returned to hands, what they had done, what they could still do. Yesterday she trained them, today she would train again. The rhythm wasn't exhausting. It was grounding, like stitching a wound slowly, holding edges together so healing had a chance. Webb's voice floated from outside the door. I swear if she's already up. He stepped in, stopped mid-sentence, lips pressing together when he saw her sitting awake, posture alert, eyes already scanning without meaning to. Of course, he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. You sleep at all. Rosa didn't answer yes or no. She just tied her boot, then the other, precise and efficient. You have something to say. Webb exhaled. Briefing in 20, and Martinez said he made coffee if you want some. Coffee, the absurd kindness of ordinary things. Rosa shook her head gently. Tell him thank you. Webb opened his mouth as if to add something, a question maybe, a thought he didn't know how to phrase. Instead, he only nodded awkwardly and stepped out. Rosa stood, shoulders straight, movements fluid. The armor she wore was Kevlar. It was control, the kind built from years of needing to be sharper than fear. But when she opened the door and stepped into the pale morning light, she paused. The flag was already raised. Wind tugged at it gentle. Soldiers moved around the courtyard stretching, drinking from steaming mugs, laughing quietly. They carried a new weight, but beneath it something else glimmered. Not bravado, not ignorance. Preparedness. She had given them that, or helped them find it, a small thing, a massive thing. Sometimes the smallest thing shifted a battlefield long before a shot fired. The briefing was short, threat assessments, patrol routes, supply inventories. Nothing catastrophic, but tension lingered. Trauma didn't dissolve with calm. It sat in the corners, patient. Mitchell ended with simple words, spoken not as command but as reminder. Stay sharp, stay together. Rosa stayed after others filtered out. Mitchell looked up from her notes. Questions? Concerns, Rosa corrected quietly. Mitchell tilted her head. Tell me. Morale is holding, but nerves are still frayed. They'll train hard, but fear lingers in muscle memory. Mitchell studied her. Do you plan to address it? Yes. And you? Rosa blinked. Me. Mitchell's gaze didn't soften. You are carrying weight too. Rosa looked down briefly at her own clenched hand. I manage. That's not the same as healing. Rosa didn't answer. Mitchell let silence speak. You're allowed to be human, you know. That startled Rosa more than explosions ever could. Allowed, permission she never gave herself. She nodded once, acknowledgement, not agreement, and walked out before her chest could tighten against truths she wasn't ready to face. Training today moved outdoors, open sand, makeshift barriers, vehicles positioned as cover. Rosa demonstrated movement through open ground, calms discipline, casualty drags. Carter watched, scribbling notes. Reeves leaned against a crate, pretending not to supervise. Webb corrected form beside her, matching her tone, firm, not harsh. Martinez spoke up occasionally, quiet but learning confidence. They were changing, she saw it. They didn't look at her like a story anymore. They looked at her like someone who believed they deserved to survive. Sun rose higher, sweat mixed with sand, lungs burned. But something beautiful sat beneath fatigue, commitment powered by understanding instead of fear. When they paused for water, Rosa knelt to adjust a tourniquet placement on a private's medical rig. He stilled under her hands, trembling slightly, not from fear, from overwhelm. You okay? She asked softly. His throat bobbed. Yeah, just didn't think I'd ever learn from someone like you. That hit deeper than praise ever could. She kept her voice gentle. I'm just a soldier teaching other soldiers. He shook his head. No, you're proof we can be more than we think. Rosa didn't know how to respond to that. Humility was safe. Hope was dangerous. Hope meant you believed you deserved a future. Hope meant you risked living. She stood and gestured, back to positions. He nodded, steadying himself. Training resumed. By afternoon they were dust-covered and drained. But laughter returned here and there, tired, real, grateful laughter. Webb wiped his forehead. If I ever thought I was tough, he shook his head. Turns out toughness isn't loud. Rosa turned slightly. Toughness isn't noise, it's endurance. He looked away briefly, emotions fighting for room. Yeah, learned that the hard way. Carter approached, tossing a water bottle. We're holding a mental resilience circle tonight. Optional reflection. You should come. Rosa's instinct was immediate. No. Carter smirked softly. Figures. She raised an eyebrow. You teach us how to fight, he said. Let us teach you how to breathe. She didn't respond, he didn't push. Martinez chimed in quietly. We don't need you to talk, just sit with us. Sit with others, vulnerability disguised as presence. I'll consider it. The admission scared her more than missions. Connection required vulnerability. Vulnerability risked shattering. Reeves walked up then, timing uncanny again. You look like someone debating whether feelings are worse than bullets. Rosa shot him a look. Bullets are predictable. He chuckled softly. Yeah, feelings are. The wind kicked up sand around their boots. For a moment, the three stood in quiet, like war and peace were circling each other, unsure who would act first. Reeves finally spoke. I want to show you something if you're willing. Rosa tensed. What? A gift, he said simply. From someone who trusted me once the way soldiers here are learning to trust you. She didn't like surprises, but she nodded. He led her out past the supply tents toward the back fence where a small open space sat between blast walls. A metal box rested on a crate, weathered, silent. Reeves picked it up and held it out. Open it. Rosa hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside lay a folded cloth, navy blue, edged in gold thread. A patch rested on top, trident over anchor, wings and pistol, familiar enough to make her chest tighten like a hand squeezed her heart. Naval Special Warfare insignia. Below it, a single line embroidered in faint thread. Service isn't who you are. Service is what you chose. Rosa swallowed thickly. Whose was this? LT Commander Tor's, Reeves said softly. He served with you, said if you ever forgot why you walked away, give you this, to remind you. Her hand hovered over the fabric, not touching, afraid touch would break something fragile. He believed you weren't running from who you were, Reeves murmured. You were running toward who you could become. She exhaled, long, uneven, trembling not from fear but from memory. She closed the box. Slowly. Precious things deserved slowness. She whispered, voice barely audible. He died on a mission we never spoke of. Yes. He never doubted me. No. She blinked hard. No tears came, not because she refused, but because the body saved them for later. Why give me this now? Because you finally stopped punishing yourself for surviving. Her breath shook once, just once. Then steadied. You should keep it, she whispered. Reeves shook his head. It was never mine to keep. Rosa looked at the box again, like it was a wound and a promise at once. After a long silence, she murmured, I'm not done learning how to live. You don't have to be, he replied. Just don't stop trying. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The way her hand rested on the lid, gentle, grateful, grieving, said enough. She finally lifted her gaze. Sand gusted. Light softened. Somewhere on base, a medic laughed tiredly. Somewhere else, a prayer whispered. Rosa breathed. For the first time, breathing didn't feel like bracing. It felt like choosing. Reeves nodded. See you tonight at the quiet circle. She froze. I never agreed. You didn't have to. He walked away. Rosa stared after him, torn between annoyance and gratitude. Accountability could be infuriating, but also life-saving. Her fingers brushed the edge of the box again. Service isn't who you are. Service is what you chose. Joyce. She had forgotten she had one. Tonight, maybe she'd sit in a circle. Maybe she'd say nothing. Maybe she'd let others speak and simply listen. Maybe she'd breathe with strangers, becoming something closer to not friends yet, but comrades of the soul. For now, she placed the box in her footlocker, closed it gently, and whispered to the quiet, I'm still here. And for the first time since that night in darkness, those words didn't sound like resignation. They sounded like beginning. Evening arrived quietly, as if the desert didn't want to intrude. The sky shifted from blistered gold to dusky violet, shadows pooling under vehicles and buildings. Night didn't rush here, it eased in, like a tired soldier asking permission to rest. Rosa stood outside the motor pool, debating with herself, something she was good at privately and terrible at aloud. The quiet circle, they'd called it, reflection time, breath work, space to share or simply sit, not mandatory, not performative. Optional healing, optional vulnerability. She wiped her palms on her pant leg, surprised at the slightest slick of sweat. She could crawl through tunnels under fire, neutralize armed fighters in seconds, drag bleeding soldiers out of death's teeth, but sitting with feelings felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. She took a breath, not a combat inhale, not control, just a breath. One step, then another. She walked to the open gravel area behind the med tent where lanterns glowed softly, placed in a circle around benches. No uniforms required, most wore t-shirts, sleeves rolled, boots unlaced. A few held mugs. No one talked loud. No one laughed too hard, like they all understood voice could bruise in spaces like this. Martinez sat near the edge, posture unsure but present. Carter leaned back, hands folded across his stomach, staring up like counting stars. Webb paced once, then froze when he saw her. His shoulders lifted in something close to relief. "You came," he murmured. "Still deciding if I stay." Webb nodded once, fair. No jokes, no ego, he understood. Rosa sat, not center, not far edge, just somewhere, a place where she could leave if needed, old reflex. Carter cleared his throat. "We don't start with talking, we start with breathing." Everyone closed their eyes. Rosa did too, reluctantly, cautiously, discipline over comfort. Carter guided the inhale, exhale, soft and slow. For the first time in months, or maybe years, Rosa's breath didn't feel like a weapon. Someone sniffed. Someone whispered a name, not loud, just memory escaping lips. "Tim." Silence held it gently. Martinez spoke next, voice cracking. "I thought I was going to die. I kept thinking, I didn't tell my sister goodbye." Another voice. "I froze when the lights blew, thought I'd get us all killed." A medic whispered, "I saw so much blood, I couldn't move for a second." Words spilled like small wounds revealing themselves. Rosa didn't speak, didn't need to, presence was enough. Someone asked quietly, "Dean, what about you?" She opened her eyes, slow, reluctant. All eyes lifted toward her, but their gaze wasn't pressure, it was permission. She stared at her hands for a long moment, fingers curled loosely like holding something fragile. "I'm afraid," she said softly. No one expected that. You could feel it, the surprise, the stillness. "Not of fighting," she continued. "Not of dying, but of living every day waiting for the next thing that forces me to become someone I spent years trying to unlearn." Silence, not heavy, not judgmental, true silence, the kind that holds truth gently so it doesn't shatter. Webb's voice broke the quiet, low and sincere. "I'm scared of failing again." Martinez nodded. "I'm scared of panicking when someone needs me." Carter's breath shook. "I'm scared of losing more people." Someone else whispered, "I'm scared of what fear makes me do." Rosa's chest softened just a fraction. Fear was supposed to isolate. Hearing it spoken aloud made it feel shared, less monstrous, more human. The lanterns flickered. Someone passed a thermos of tea. No one preached. No one pretended. Just quiet presence, the kind that didn't demand anything. Healing rarely roared. Sometimes it sat with you in the dirt until you could exhale honestly. Rosa didn't speak again, but she stayed, even after others drifted away one by one. Webb gave her a nod and left. Carter clapped her shoulder lightly, cautious affection, and followed. Martinez lingered until he saw she wasn't leaving. Then it was only Rosa and the hum of night. She traced the dust with her boot, drawing a line then smudging it away. Reeves approached without sound. Of course he did. You stayed, he said gently. I listened. Same thing for someone like you. She didn't look up. I'm tired. I know. Tired of being two people. He sat beside her quietly. What if you don't have to choose? What if you're simply becoming a third version, someone who carries both? Rosa didn't respond. Reeves leaned back, hands braced behind him, staring at the sky. You think war is what built you, he said, but I think peace is what tests you. She let silence answer first, her oldest language. Then slowly she spoke. I don't trust peace. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then trust yourself, he said, that you can exist without drawing blood to justify existence. She looked at him then, something raw behind her eyes. I don't know who I am when I'm not needed. You're learning, he said, and that's enough. She wasn't sure, but she didn't argue. Later that night she returned to the barracks. Most lights were out. The world finally felt quiet. She sat on her bunk, unlaced boots, rolled her sleeves. Her hand brushed the footlocker where the folded cloth waited. Service is what you choose. Her fingers hovered, but she didn't open it. Not yet. Some symbols needed rest too. She lay back slowly, staring at the ceiling. The hum of base generators pulsed steady, like a heartbeat. She thought she was falling asleep, a rare, accidental peace, when a distant voice pierced the stillness. A radio outside crackled, urgent murmurs, boots rushing across gravel, a vehicle door slamming. Rosa was upright before thought kicked in, instinct slamming back into place like armor reattaching to spine. Voices rose, hurried now, concern, not panic, but escalating. She stood, grabbed her jacket, boots loose-laced, and stepped into the corridor. Outside, soldiers clustered near the gate. Headlights cut through dust. Radios buzzed fractured reports. Webb jogged up, breath sharp. Convoy hit 2 miles out, multiple wounded inbound and one stuck vehicle. Carter sprinted past with medics. Martinez grabbed stretchers. Reeves tightened his helmet strap. Rosa felt that old electricity surge, purpose, sharp and immediate. Her muscles tensed, ready, but something held her still. Not fear. Joyce. Fight didn't call her, duty did. Not in secret, not alone. She wasn't the only capable one now. Webb looked at her, waiting, expecting command. Rosa lifted her chin. You go, she told him. Webb blinked, stunned. You're not. I'm not running, she said softly. I'm letting others do what they have learned. He processed that. Something like pride flickered through his expression. Then he nodded, sharp, confident, ready. Yes, Staff Sergeant. He moved, shouting orders with purpose born from humility and growth, not ego. Medics mounted the ambulance. Engines roared. Soldiers mobilized with practiced discipline. Lights cut through dust and darkness. This time, Rosa wasn't the first person jumping into fire. Because she already lit the torches others now carried. Reeves stood beside her, watching the convoy disappear into night. That was harder than killing a machine gun nest, wasn't it? Rosa's jaw tightened. Letting go of control always is. And how do you feel? She didn't answer right away. The wind brushed her face, cool, real. Boots scuffed gravel behind her. Voices moved with confidence she had helped build. Finally she exhaled, slow, steady, honest. Like I'm learning to survive peace. Reeves smiled. You are. She looked at the dark road where others now ran to danger. Her fingers loosened at her sides. Her heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but from trust. Trust in them. Trust in herself. She whispered into desert air, soft as prayer, firm as oath. They don't need me to fight every battle. And another truth followed, quiet, painful, freeing. I don't need battle to feel alive. For the first time in years, Rosa Dean didn't brace for impact. She simply stood still. She let others run toward the fire she once carried alone. And she didn't feel useless. She felt necessary. Not as weapon, as witness, as teacher, as reminder that warriors earn peace not by escaping war, but by learning to live through it, after it, despite it. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. Sometimes strength doesn't shout. Sometimes resilience simply stands and lets the world breathe without forcing itself to bleed again. Rosa breathed. The night held, and she stayed still on purpose. Dawn didn't break, it unfolded. A slow bleed of pale gold over sand, washing the base in a tired kind of light. The kind that didn't celebrate a new day, but acknowledged survival of the last one. Rosa sat alone on the back steps of the barracks, elbows resting on her knees, coffee cooling untouched between her palms. The night convoy hadn't returned until hours later, tense, exhausted, rattled but alive. They didn't wake her. Not because they didn't want her there. Because they didn't need her there. That thought held a strange power, sharp and soft at once. She had spent years believing her only worth lay in stepping into danger. That usefulness was blood-tied, fire-shaped. Now, watching soldiers walk by exchanging tired smiles instead of haunted ones, she realized something startling. She had taught them to stand, without her. A sound approached, steady steps across gravel. Reeves lowered himself beside her without asking. He didn't reach for her coffee, didn't break silence. He just existed next to her in that quiet space where words could ruin what presence healed. Finally, Rosa asked, "Everyone back?" He nodded, shaken but good. Webb held command like he was born with it. Rosa let that settle. Pride didn't swell, it steadied. Not ego, legacy. Webb's voice echoed in her memories, loud once, clumsy with insecurity. Last night he returned with dust on his boots and steadiness in his spine. He had grown because she let him. "You didn't go," Reeves said softly, though not accusing. "I wanted to," she admitted, staring at the barren horizon. Every instinct screamed to move, but instincts aren't always orders. "What did you feel instead?" Rosa stilled. The truth felt like sand in her chest, coarse, unfamiliar, real. "Trust," she whispered. Reeves looked at her, not surprised but proud. "That's harder than bravery." "Bravery charges forward," she murmured. "Trust stays still." "Sometimes the bravest thing we do is not fight." She kept her eyes on the desert, as if it held answers in dunes and wind she never learned to read before now. "You think peace wants me?" she asked quietly. Reeves thought long before responding. "I think peace doesn't want anything," he said. "It waits, patient, silent. The question is whether peace will take you." He paused. "It's whether you'll finally take it." The air tightened around them, not suffocating, just full. Rosa didn't answer. You don't answer questions like that quickly. You grow into them. The base slowly woke, boots crunching gravel, the rumble of generators starting, distant calls for morning formation. A medic yawned and stretched. A mechanic rolled his neck like it hurt everywhere. Life resumed, imperfect and unbroken. Rosa rubbed a thumb across the coffee rim. "You know," Reeves said suddenly, voice casual, "you can't hide behind training forever." "I'm not hiding." "You're transforming. There's a difference, but transformation asks something of you." She lifted an eyebrow slightly. "And what's that?" "Presence," he murmured, "even when nothing explodes." Her jaw shifted. "Stillness feels like exposure." "It is." "I don't like exposure." "You survived a life where exposure meant death. You're learning a life where exposure means being seen." A beat slow, honest. "I don't know how to exist in that world," she confessed. "You didn't know how to exist in war either," he said, "until you did." Rosa swallowed. Reeves stood, brushed dust off his hands. "Come to the yard, formation in 10." He walked away. Rosa didn't move immediately. She breathed instead, a small thing once, now a ritual. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Sand whispered. A bird cried from somewhere near the wall. Life simple and persistent. Then she rose. The yard was full. Soldiers lined up by squad, neat, disciplined, but with edges softened by humanity, not broken sharp by dread. Webb barked light instructions. Martinez adjusted a recruit's sling. Carter wiped sleep from his eyes, then smirked when he saw Rosa approach. They didn't stare anymore. They watched. Different. Respectful. Grounded, not worshipful. Reeves nodded at her. She joined them, not in front, among. She didn't need the front row to lead. Mitchell stepped out, clipboard tucked under arm. Night convoy successful, no KIA. Shoulders relaxed across the field. Relief didn't cheer, it exhaled. Mitchell continued. Some of you faced fear last night. Some stayed back and fought a different one. Both mattered. Rosa felt the sentence land in her chest, like a truth she wasn't expecting but desperately needed. Mitchell glanced at her, subtle, brief knowing. We train again at 900, dismissed. But no one left yet. Webb stepped forward, hesitant, then committed. Staff Sergeant, he called, not loud, strong. Heads turned. Rosa blinked, not hiding surprise. Webb scratched his neck, awkward again in a human way. We were thinking, some of us, after last night, after this week. Martinez stepped beside him. Carter joined him, then others, quiet, earnest. Webb tried again. You said show up, you said learn, you said breathe through fear. We heard you. A pause. And we want to ask something. Rosa stiffened slightly. What? Webb exhaled. When this is over, when rotation changes, can you keep teaching? Not just combat, not just tactics. He swallowed. Teach how to come home. Silence, even the wind paused. Rosa's throat tightened. She didn't answer right away. She couldn't. Words would have cracked. Carter added gently, we don't need a legend. We just need someone who remembers how to walk back from who they had to be. A medic whispered, you saved lives this week without firing a weapon. Another voice, we want to learn that too. It wasn't a compliment, it was faith. Rosa inhaled as if air suddenly cost effort. I don't have all the answers, she murmured. We don't need all, Martinez said. Just someone willing to look for them with us. Her chest ached in that painful way healing sometimes entered, sharp first, then warm. Reeves crossed his arms, quiet pride flickering like a secret flame. Rosa looked at them, really looked. Soldiers who were kids once, warriors learning to be whole, people choosing to still care in a world that punished vulnerability. And she answered the only way that honored truth. I'll stay, she said softly, not to lead, to walk with you. Nods, relief, respect, nothing loud, just real. Webb exhaled. Carter smiled. Martinez blinked hard. Mitchell almost smirked like she already knew this ending. Rosa turned away before the emotion became too visible. Reeves followed at a distance, not hovering, just there. She walked to the far wall where sand met concrete. She rested her hand on sun-warmed stone. Her voice was barely audible, only for herself. I thought losing the battlefield meant losing myself. The wind carried dust across her boots. The bass hummed alive behind her. But maybe leaving battle isn't losing identity. Another breath steadier than before. Maybe it's earning a new one. Reeves stopped beside her. What's next? She studied the desert, vast, unforgiving, beautiful in its brutal honesty. Next, she whispered, I learn how to live without waiting for loss. And after that, she almost smiled, a tired, uncertain, hopeful thing. Maybe I'll learn how to let peace stay. Reeves nodded, and when fear returns. Rosa didn't flinch. I'll breathe through it like I taught them. Silence. Not empty. Full. Rosa closed her eyes briefly, head lifted toward rising light. Sun warmed her face. Voices carried behind her, training, living, trying. The world didn't demand she save it. It invited her to belong inside it. She whispered not prayer, not vow, acceptance. I'm still here. Not surviving. Remaining, choosing, becoming. Not defined by war, not erased by peace. A woman remaking herself one breath, one burden, one quiet dawn at a time. Sometimes redemption isn't a triumphant return. Sometimes it's a decision, repeated each morning. I will not disappear just because no one needs me to bleed today. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. Sometimes honor doesn't salute. Sometimes strength doesn't fight. Sometimes it simply stays. Even when silence is harder than battle. Even when peace feels like a battlefield of its own. And when history looks for heroes, it might never find her name. But somewhere, deep in desert sand and tired hearts she steadied, truth remains. She was just the ambulance driver. Until the world broke open. And she remembered she could choose. Not only how to fight, but how to live.